Good evening, everybody. Getting some cameras readjusted here as we do our monthly government and legislative affairs update. My name is Adam White, and as you can tell, I'm back here in the Nenana headquarters, where I work remote for the Alaska Airmen's Association doing government and legislative affairs. And so wanted to go ahead and do our normal update, but at a different time. And so just want to briefly mention what this change in the schedule is for. Historically, I've been doing this on the second Tuesday of the month. Well, that's been a little bit of a problem with meeting schedules and email timelines and other things for the Alaska Airmen's Association, and even some of the meetings that I normally participate in. So it appears that most of the meetings are in the first half of the month. And so I would have these updates a week prior and not have a lot of specifics to give to you because I was still in the middle of some meetings that would be pertinent to what our topics are. And so between that and other schedules, we decided to push these events to the third Tuesday of each month. And so that's why we're coming to you tonight. So you can look for that to be a consistent thing moving forward. Once again, we're doing these on the third Tuesday night, still doing them on Instagram and on Facebook. It's a little easier to do that when I'm home and not traveling. That's the other big part of this, is I am traditionally in Anchorage the second week of the month, and early on that was easy to do that then and there. But these updates are a little easier to do when I've got things set up here in the hangar. So enough about that. It's good to see some familiar faces popping up on Instagram for sure, and on Facebook things as well. So let's go ahead and get to it, because I don't want to take up too much of your time this evening. One of the things I wanted to mention is that last week I was in Juneau. Was down there for the Governor's Aviation Advisory Board meeting. I probably shouldn't call it that. That's the traditional name. Now it's just the DOT Aviation Advisory Board. We do advise not just the governor, but the DOT commissioner and the deputy commissioner for aviation. So that's where I was. I've been sitting on that board for a little more than a year, almost 2 years now. And so we try to go down to Juneau during the legislative session and have a meeting in person there. While I was in Juneau, I was able to walk around the Capitol building, talk to a lot of legislators about aviation-related issues on behalf of the advisory board, and then had some time to go around and talk about things specifically in light of the Alaska Airmen's Association. So it was a very, very productive week. If you've ever been to Juneau during the legislative session, it can be a pretty hectic time. And it was definitely that. But it was very good, very productive, and was able to get a lot of face time with some legislators while they're in Juneau. Some of the things that we talked about in last week's advisory board meeting that is pertinent to all of us. So worker retention and workforce development. Those were the two big items for the Aviation Advisory Board. The Department of Transportation is having some issues, just like it seems like the rest of the world, with workforce retention and workforce development. And it became very clear and very evident that that was the case back in December with the big snow events in Anchorage and as well as in Fairbanks. And so very difficult to keep an airport up and running in those conditions when you are on minimal staff. Now for us as general aviation pilots, we don't typically use the big runway in Anchorage or the big runway in Fairbanks, but those same crews help maintain the other parts of the airport that we do use, like Lake Hood and like the East Ramp in Fairbanks. It's also becoming an issue in rural Alaska, in the villages, trying to find folks that are able to work for that pay scale and those schedules has been very difficult. Because DOT is kind of held to the legislative process when it comes to funding and the governor's budgets, pay has not been able to keep pace with industry, and so a lot of folks will get some experience, they get some training, and they move on. They move on to another job doing the same thing in the private sector for making a considerable amount more money. So it's difficult to keep equipment operators and operations folks at our airports. So we're trying to work with the legislators and with the governor's budget to figure out what we can do to help with that, try to figure out what that may look like down the road. So that was one of the big topics last week that does directly impact us, even though a lot of us do off-airport operations. I'm sitting here in a hangar with an aircraft with wheel skis in it, another airplane with straight skis, and a set of floats hanging in the ceiling up here above me. And so off-airport operations are very important, but I think we would all admit that we do appreciate the airport system that we have in our state that DOT maintains, and local airport sponsors like municipalities maintain as well. So important stuff, even though it seems like it's mainly for the big airlines, it's important for us as well in general aviation. Speaking of the governor's budget, I'm glad to say that there's no fee increases for general aviation or aviation specific. No fuel tax proposal as far as an increase that I've been able to see or find talking with legislators. They don't seem that there's much of an appetite for that in this session. So that's some good news. Not expecting any big changes there. Did talk to a couple legislators about some proposed amendments to some statutes, talking about that may influence aviation in our state, and so working with them on some draft language and offering up the opinion of the Alaska Airmen's Association as how some of that amended statutes may impact our use of aviation in the state. Not really at liberty to talk specifics about what those statutes might be or anything along those lines, but just be assured that the Airmen's Association is involved, engaged, and we're working on it. So Lake Hood, looks like the weed problem in Lake Hood is going to have a little extra attention this coming summer. DOT is proposing to put in some, I guess, herbicide, but it's for water. It's been approved. They've used it there before. EPA signs off on it. DEC has signed off on it. And they're going to be treating Lake Hood because the mower that's there is not able to keep up with it. So that's going to be the problem there at Lake Hood, to figure out how to deal with that and try to mitigate some of those weeds. Now, thankfully, so far, they say that they have not found Elodia in Lake Hood again, so that's good. But there is still quite a few weeds there that are causing problems with water rudders and other things. Let's see, some other things. We're continuing to work with the Kenai CTAF frequency realignment project that's going on within the FAA. And that's part of the FASI, the FAA Alaska Safety Initiative, which, by the way, the 2022 final report is out. If you want to read up on that, you can find it on the FAA's website. Just do FAA SI 2022 as a search, and you'll find it. But the Kenai CTAF, there's some issues there that have been the same in the Mat-Su Valley, and so we're reevaluating the frequencies that are assigned to the airports down there, and getting a lot of engagement, a lot of public engagement there with the aviation community, and some really good potential solutions that have come to the table. I'm actually at 8 o'clock tonight going to be presenting remote and virtually to the Peninsula Pilots Club about this issue. So if you're on the Kenai Peninsula and can run over to the Soldotna Airport at the MARC hangar, they have their Peninsula Pilots Club meeting starting at 7 o'clock, but I'm on schedule to present at 8 o'clock at that event tonight, talking about that issue. Let's see. Don Lee and the instrument check ride and the 44709 letters. There's all kinds of names that people are calling these things to kind of issue and talk about that particular item. From what I'm hearing from a lot of folks that have had to go back and retest the precision approach, that they say it's actually going very well. It's going very smoothly. The reports I've heard from Flight Standards is that they're getting folks checked off and moved on. They did, however, realize that there were some paper applications, paper 8710 forms, and we keep throwing numbers around, but I think if you've been flying for more than 10 years, well, probably more than 15 years now, you know what an 8710 form is, and that was the paper that you filled out for your application for your check ride. That's all been digitized now, and it's part of the IACRA system. But there's still some need and still some folks that have used the paper 8710 forms, and Flight Standards realized they needed to go back and reevaluate some of those, and so they've added a few people to that list of folks that need to go through and redo a precision approach as part of their check ride. So that process is working smoothly. We want to remind everyone that if you have been affected by that, please reach out to the Airmen's Association. I would love to have a conversation with you, find out more of the details of what we can do to possibly help you prepare for that 709 ride. We have purchased a block time of instructor and simulator time at the UAA facility there at Merrill Field. Now, I know that's not going to help everybody because not everybody lives in Anchorage, myself included. So that is a help for some, but not a help for everybody. But we want to talk to you and want to see what we can do to help you in that regard. So one other issue that has come up, and I talked about this last month, and I wasn't sure what exactly was going to happen. I had some pretty good ideas. I'd had some conversations with folks within the FAA and within missile defense, but the R-2206 restricted area that has grown and is now charted because of the new radar site at Clear Space Force Station. I almost slipped up and called it an Air Force Station. It's not, it's Space Force now. So that radar is actually performing better than anticipated. And so because of that, they have not been able to test it to its fullest capabilities and keep everybody safe that we need to. And so especially when it comes to airborne electronics. And so what they've asked for and what they've been able to get from the FAA is another temporary flight restriction that's 1 mile to 1.5 miles, depending on what part of the circle further out. And now it goes up to 36,000 feet instead of 32,000. So they've asked for that because they need to be able to protect more of the airspace to find out the true full capabilities of this radar site. There was some jokes and speculation that the TFR coincided with some balloons that may have been flying over in some of the activities of late. That is not what the reasoning is for that TFR. We will see that TFR be in place throughout the coming summer and probably until this time next year. And then at that point, we'll see what happens. Most likely there's going to be some talks about what does the final design of R-2206 look like, and it may have to be revisited at that point. So rest assured, I am on this issue. This is literally in my backyard, and so we're working that. The concern for the greater aviation community in the state is that this is at the north end of Windy Pass, and that is one of the most heavily traversed passes in the state to get into the interior from South Central and vice versa. So this is a big deal, and it's also important that we understand the true capability of that radar. And it is unclear yet whether or not they'll be able to dial it back and still have the capabilities that they need, with the understanding that in times of war or in times of operational necessity, I think is the phrase that the military and missile defense and everybody has used, that they can turn it up. And that's why we have a beacon and a radio frequency, all that stuff that's talked about there on the chart. There'll be more information coming out in the Alaska Supplement at the next publication cycle, actually, about some of that. So be looking for that as we come closer to it. So there's several other things that are on the table that I continue to work, just to kind of give you a preview of what's happening in the days ahead. I'm heading down to Seattle to the state fairgrounds there in Puyallup. This weekend is the Northwest Aviation Trade Show and Conference. I've been invited to come down and give a talk on Saturday afternoon about flying to and around Alaska. And so I'll be giving that presentation this coming Saturday. And while I'm in the area, staying around on Monday to be able to visit with folks at the FAA Western Service Area and Western Service Center. These are the folks that make a lot of decisions for Alaska. And so they are able to have these conversations face-to-face now that COVID has kind of backed off a little bit. And so kind of getting back to the pre-COVID travel schedule, and I'll be down in the Seattle Tacoma area this weekend to be able to do some of that. Several issues we're talking about. GPS resiliency is one of those. Talking about IFR navigation routes, talking about mountain pass charting on VFR charts, talking about ASOS and AWAS units, talking about precision GPS approaches, talking about a lot of infrastructure stuff. So I've got a pretty full schedule for Monday coming up to talk to the folks there. So I've seen a couple of questions pop up here asking if I work for the FAA. No, I do not work for the FAA. I work for the Alaska Airmen's Association. And so I work a lot with the FAA, but I am not an FAA employee. I am a part-time person with the Alaska Airmen's Association doing government legislative affairs. So hopefully that answers that question there that popped up on Instagram. And so looking through some of the other questions that may have popped up, I haven't seen anything else other than just folks checking in and giving the thumbs up and waving and all that kind of thing. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up. Try to keep these between 15 to 20 minutes, and just wanted to give you a little bit of an update, and I'll have more details for you as we progress. But thank you for your membership. If you're not a member, I would highly encourage you to consider becoming a member and adding your voice to the 2,000 other people that appreciate and support general aviation in Alaska. If you haven't bought your raffle ticket, I encourage you to go online and do that. All raffle ticket sales are online now, so you can go to our website, alaskaairmen.org, and purchase your raffle ticket for the Carbon Cub FX2 that we are giving away at the trade show at the Great Alaska Aviation Gathering the first weekend in May. So also look at our website for more information about scholarships and how you can help with the scholarship fund, and if you would like to apply for a scholarship. And it's not just for colleges. If you are working towards getting all your flight ratings, your mechanics rating, all that kind of stuff, even outside of a college setting, those scholarships, you're eligible for some of those as well. So, all right. With that, I'm not seeing any more questions. I encourage you to reach out to me directly. My email address, adam.white, W-H-I-T-E, at alaskaairmen.org. And appreciate you listening in, and keep me posted on any advocacy issues that you may see come to light and not sure what our position is or what our activity might be on those. I'll be glad to fill you in. And you may be the first person to tell me about a specific issue that we need to go ahead and start working. So again, thank you for joining me tonight. Look forward to talking to you again soon, and keep the dirty side down, I guess, and the blue side up. So good night.